Okay, welcome back. It's not siesta time. It's time for another panel. And I'm going to run it same way as the last panel. We're going to have all these speakers sitting at the front, and they'll come and present the talk, roughly 7 minutes we've given them. And then we'll have a discussion in the end. We have an hour and a half, so it's a bit more time than the previous panels, but we also have more people. So I asked the speakers to try to keep with the time, 7 minutes. So speakers, I'll present them now. So it's already seated. Jean-Paul Toutain, everybody has seen Jean-Paul, I think, this morning, but for those who arrived late, is the director of the regional office of CNRS, the French National Center for Scientific Research. Based in Melbourne, at the Uni of Melbourne, hosted by the Uni of Melbourne. And he's going to talk about tools for collaboration at CNRS. And then we have Jean-Philippe Diguet. Where is he? He's there. Okay. So Jean-Philippe is from CNRS and is the director of the International Research Lab Crossing, which is based in Adelaide, and it involves CNRS, the 3 universities of South Australia, and Naval Group, and Toutain in the Atlantic. Always get confused, sorry. Then we'll have Professor Arnan, which is the director, the director of the Micro Nano Research Facility and of the Integrated Photonics and Application Center at RMIT. And Arnan is going to talk about the new AFRAN project. Oh, it's a project funded by the EU. We'll have Jean-François Auquette, that already talked this morning, who's from INRAE, Scientific Officer for Australia and New Zealand at INRAE. And he will talk about the international strategy of INRAE. And he will give us an example of success story, the International MIT 3G Foundation. Florence Cotel, where is she, Florence? Here. So she's a neuroscientist, and she's the founder of the association Bliss Science and Innovation Incorporated. And she's also AFRAN alumni leader. And she just cycles 3,000 kilometers, so she's fit. And she will talk about inspiration and communication as powerful tools for collaboration. And our last speaker, Jody Gertz. She's the founder and managing director of B Scientifics. And she was the last recipient of the AFAS Victoria Fellowship, which is now the AFRAN Victoria Fellowship. The next one will be awarded on Tuesday morning. And so Jody will give us the feedback about getting this fellowship and going to France with this fellowship. Okay, so the name of the panel, sorry, I didn't give it. It's Tools for Success in Collaboration. So we're going to start with the first speaker. Because you are recorded, I asked the speakers if you can stay here and not wander around, because you are off camera when you walk around. Okay, so Jean-Paul, you're on.
So thank you, Thierry. Okay. Thank you to AFRAN and Swinburne University for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. Last week was the first anniversary of the CNRS office for OCEANIA in Australia. So it's a nice moment for us. I'll try to be swift. My organization is CNRS, Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique. It is the largest research institution in France and in Europe, and it is the only a multidisciplinary research agency in France. Our mission is to produce basic science for the benefit of the society. And we have a contract every 4 years with the French Ministry for Higher Education and Research. And we have a given number of societal challenges to tackle. And right now we have the usual suspects of societal challenges to tackle that are energy transition, climate change, sustainable city, and I forgot some of the other ones. But we have 3 main engagements for our activities. The first one is to produce multidisciplinary basic science. It's not an evidence because the structure of CNRS is made of 10 topical departments: chemistry, physics, earth science, and so on. But we are more and more pushed towards multidisciplinary science. The second engagement is for science with the industry. It is a real priority for us. And one of our key points is that we have, for example, 220 joint research units or joint research structures with industrial partners, some of them being abroad, and one of them is in Australia, and Jean-Philippe will talk to us about that. And the third engagement is for international cooperation. And to tell you, I want to give you 2 indicators for showing the importance of this engagement, is that 65% of our publications are joint publications with foreign partners. And we recruit every year about 500 young researchers, permanent researchers with the status of civil servant, and 1 out of 3 of those newly recruited researchers are foreign citizens. Because we are not a funding agency, we cannot fund research costs for international collaboration, cannot fund neither research equipments, but on the contrary, we propose to our researchers a toolkit to allow them to launch, to initiate, to consolidate, to structure, and to sustain on the long term the partnership. So, okay. So this is the toolkit we CNRS proposed to its researcher. It's the main characteristics of the toolkit is its progressivity. The first step is international emerging action. So it is a 2 years long PI to PI project. It is found 10 to 15K euro for the 2 years. It is really dedicated to the mobility of researchers. It is dedicated to trying new ideas and trying new teams. Very often it is used by researchers who so far did not know them before. The second scheme is a double scheme. It is either the International Research Network or the International Research Project. International Research Network are dedicated to groups who want to have networking activities, international meeting, conference, workshops, summer school, and so on. The International Research Project is dedicated to groups who really want to implement collaborative research. Those are 5 years long projects funded 50 to 70,000 euro for the 5 years. So we found mainly the mobility and the organization of events. They do not start from scratch. I mean that to begin an international research project or network, you need already to have some outcomes, some preliminary results. What is important is that those networks or programs can be renewed several times. So we have international networks or international projects which are 10, 15 years old. And we have in France 200, in the world, sorry, we have 210 international networks and 110 international projects. And the last tool is the International Research laboratories. Let's say it's our iconic tool in the world. It is a real physical lab, which is settled in our partners' premise, with a physical permanent presence of French researchers together with their foreign partners. And they are 5 years long project. They can be renewed. We have in Singapore, for example, an international research laboratory, which is more than 15 years old. In Japan, we have one which is more than 20 years old. And the French researchers who are assigned permanently can stay for a long time. In Singapore, we have researchers who are then in Singapore for more than 10 years. So it's really physical lab dedicated to the very long-term projects. And we have 77 of those in the world, and 5 of them are implemented with industrial partners. Just a few words about those. And we have also, I'm sorry, I forgot it, joint PhD programs. We are not a university, so we negotiate every year with the ministry a small number of PhD contracts. And so we are implementing with some strategic partners in the world joint PhD programs. And we, so far for now 5 years, we have implemented about 20 joint PhD programs with 12 strategic partners. And in Australia, so far, IAU and the University of Melbourne have implemented those joint PhD programs with us. In a very few words, those tools are very flexible, easy to implement, except for IRL that would be a little bit more complicated, but very flexible in terms of using money, in terms of partners, in terms of people inside, in terms of agenda. The idea is to make the partnership as easy and as flexible as possible. Another thing which is important is that I mentioned CNRS researchers. In fact, all researchers who belong to a joint research unit, which is under the CNRS supervision, can be eligible to take part or even to be the leader of such a project. And for example, university professor or engineering school professor can be part or can be leaders of those programs. And the last slide, I would like to introduce to you one of our success story. Success story is Sintra. This is one of our IRL in Singapore. We have 4 IRLs in Singapore. Sintra is the CNRS International Anti-Thales Research Alliance. It's an international research laboratory with the National Nanyang Technological University and CNRS. I'm sorry. So it's one of the 77 IRL in the world and one of the 4 IRL in Singapore and one of the 5 IRL with an industrial partner. The partnerships has begun very early as 2002 with a series of workshops, And the first IRL has been launched in 2009, Sintra 1. After that, we have had Sintra 2, Sintra 3, and we are currently launching Sintra 4. The objective of this IRL is fundamental research and applied projects in the field of nanomaterials, electronics, photonics. And we are, thanks to the participation of Thales, a focus on transnational research. So we have 4 pillars in Sintra. I will not describe them. What is important is that it is a real network between several labs in France, several labs from CNRS, from Thales, and the University of Nanyang and the Thales in Singapore. Right now, the workshop is about 54 members with 33 full-time equivalent. We have 4 full-time researchers from CNRS and Thales, 20 partial times, fellows, PhD, and so on. And the results since 2010 We have had 60 research projects, 6 patent files, 955 publications in a given number of international journals, and we have trained 50 PhD students. So it's a very old, it is an ancient partnership. We consider in CNRS it is a successful story. It shows that it works well, it works on the long period, it works on the long time, and it allows to attract people from different lab networks and to get some fundings from different calls. Thank you. Yes. Okay, good afternoon. Yeah, it's working. Yes. Good afternoon, and thank you for hosting us, and thank you, AFRAN, for the organization of this forum and for the invitation. So I'm Jean-Philippe Diguet, I'm the director of this ARL Crossing, which is one of the international research lab at CNRS in Adelaide. So the as Jean-Paul said, an ARL is a flagship mechanism at CNRS to organize cooperatively, to have some cooperation out of France on specific fundamental questions. So we focus on low TRL research, and we are one of the 80 international labs of CNRS around the world. So we are a quite specific ARL because we are 6 partners: CNRS, IMT Atlantic, and Naval Group, the industrial partner from France, and the 3 universities of Adelaide, the University of Adelaide, UniSA, and Flinders. So how did ARL start? A few years ago with a workshop that was organized in Adelaide, and with the support of the French Embassy, of the government of South Australia, and the Brittany region. And during this workshop, a multidisciplinary group of researchers came up with an idea of how to fundamental question to address, and that question was considering the evolution of artificial agents in our lives, in our living and working environments. How can we manage over time an hybrid team to improve the performance and the well-being of humans? And of course, to deal with that kind of very large question, you need to have expertise from different fields, including AI, robotics, human factors, psychology, and so on. So the proposal has been submitted to CNRS in December 19. The consortium agreement was signed in December 20, and finally we were able to start in January 21. So that's not the, okay, no, never mind. I was. Yeah, so we have some support from different partners for this ARL, starting by CNRS. So what do we get from CNRS? We have some in-kind support because I am a researcher at CNRS, so I'm assigned to the ARL Crossing at Adelaide, and we have the possibility to host some French academics. We are in the secondment to CNRS for the ARL Crossing. This is a case of Cédric, who spoke this morning, and Benoit.
who are from to ENIB engineering school and NSTAR engineering school in France, who are working for CNRS for the time of their secondment in at the crossing. We also have some support from our French partner, including CNRS and INT Atlantic, and it gives us so the possibility to get some fundings from the usual fundings we get in France for PhD and access to the National Research Agency, ANR, to get some fundings like any CNRS lab. We, of course, are in Adelaide to work with our colleagues from the 3 universities, so we have access to their facilities, and that's very important for us. So we can work with the different labs they have in their university in Adelaide. And also as because our partner are Australian universities, we can apply to Australian mechanisms for for funding research in Australia. And we have our partner Naval Group, industrial partner Naval Group, will give us the possibility to apply our ideas to. Thank you very much. To the industrial challenges. And we also have the possibility to get funding for PhD from a Naval Group. So if I'm going back to what is working well and what must be improved, what is working very well so far is the PhD students. We have started, we have 12 PhD students, and 10 of these PhDs are in co-tutelle between France and Australia. We are also happy to get more, to be attractive for Australian researchers. We have increased our number of members with young, talented researchers recently. So this is working well. And we have many PhD projects to start in the future. And we are also a part of the AFRAN that we will discuss later, the European project to fund PhD between Australia and France. Our current challenges, to be honest, is for us to understand the way the research is funded, is working here in Australia, and that's the same thing for our Australian colleagues, to understand how we can get fundings for research in France and in Europe. And so there's we need some time to get the knowledge we need to be able to be efficient in collecting or getting this kind of grants in France and Australia. And well, I should say also that the other point, which is not so easy, it's the concept itself of a CNRS lab, which is something very usual in France, because it's what we have in all universities. A CNRS lab is shared by multiple universities, and we have teams with people belonging to the different universities. That kind of concept doesn't really exist in Australia, so we have to explain how this can work. And we have also a lab which comes in addition to existing labs and research organizations. So we need to find our proper place in this environment. And what we expect, just to finish on what we expect in the future, we would like to see the possibility for us to have the co-funding between ANR and ARC as it exists between France and Japan, US, Germany, and so on. And this is something which is not available today. I hope it will be the case in the future. And also we will be very happy to see Australia as a partner, possible partner for European projects in the future, which is not the case today. Thank you.
Jean-Philippe.
All right, thanks for inviting me. I'm Arnan Mitchell from RMIT University. Looks like all the text has diminished significantly in the translation. I'll speak to the pictures. Maybe move to the next slide. So I'm director of the Micro Nano Research Facility. I'm also the director of the Integrated Photonics and Applications Center at RMIT University. RMIT, in case you are not from Melbourne, is right in the middle of the CBD. I arrived by train here. It took me about 20 minutes, so it's very, very convenient. Actually, what you might not know is that there's also a really comprehensive micro and nano fabrication facility right in the heart of the city. So maybe, oh, hang on, I've got the clicker. Is it going to work? No. Can you do the slides for me? Thanks. Yeah, maybe move on to the next slide. Oh, hang on. I won't go into the detail of what all the different research that the Micro Nano Research Facility does. I just wanted to present the context of how the AFRAN project came about and some of the other previous projects. So the researchers in this facility work on a lot of different types of micro and nanotechnologies, so materials, integrated circuits, with the particular applications in biomedical devices, sensors, and my own area, which is in photonics. I should also mention RMIT had reimagined itself maybe 10 years ago as a global university. So we have campuses, several campuses in Melbourne, but we also have major campuses overseas, particularly in Vietnam. So we have 2 major campuses in Vietnam, but also established a presence in Europe. So maybe the next slide. So we're fortunate to be supported in Europe by RMIT Europe. This isn't technically a campus of the university. It isn't recognized as a degree awarding entity in Europe, but it's more regarded as it is the coordinator of a number of European Union research projects. There's probably 20 people based there, and most of those people are funded by various different EU projects. So working with them has really given us sort of boots on the ground, as it were, in engaging with Europe. You can see from the picture, this is Barcelona. It's not in France, but this is a pretty good vantage point for engaging with France, particularly the south part of France. So maybe the next slide. So I wanted to just give a little bit of history and context to my engagement with France. This really started through a sort of, researcher to researcher engagement as part of Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence. This is a past Centre of Excellence, Kudos. It was led by the University of Sydney, and Chris Delmona and Christian Grier were postdocs in Sydney University as part of this research centre. My involvement in it was from 2010 to 2017, so this is some time ago. But in that time, I got to know these 2 young postdocs and work with them a little bit. About halfway through that period, they went back to France and took up academic positions in Lyon. Christelle took up an academic position with École Centrale Lyon, and Christian took up a position with CNRS, but they work very, very closely together in the same institution, which I've come to find is very common in France, the way that CNRS works with the universities. And so this was really the start of the engagement with France. So maybe the next slide. So a little bit of a timeline. So Kudos went from 2010 to 2017. About 2015, I went and did a sabbatical for about 6 months to discover what RMIT Europe could do. As part of that, I sort of engaged with a number of European partners. I've got some partners in Germany, and I engaged with Christian and Christelle in France, and started exploring things that we could do. We set up a co-tutel PhD student with RMIT, and that was very successful. And on the basis of that, we then put in for one of the tools that we use a lot, which is a Marie Curie co-fund action. This is where the European Union puts in half the funding if you can find the other half the funding for either PhD students or postdocs. And so we took a modest approach with 10 PhD students and were successful in getting what was called inclusion set up. And this is specifically between RMIT and École Lyon. So 10 PhD students, 2 rounds, 5 in each round. And the first of those, all those positions have been filled, and the first of those are due to sort of defend their theses in the coming months, and the next round will be a year later. So that project has gone well. On the basis of that, actually RMIT Europe got involved at that point. We did this sort of independently of RMIT Europe and modelled a larger engagement called READY, based on this, and was successful in getting, I think, about 50 PhD students. But this is just with RMIT, but all of the European partners that RMIT had. So this is 50 co-tutel students between those two. This was also very successful, and RMIT Europe learned how to put these proposals together and how to support us. So I should mention in amongst this, actually, I became director of one of the international research projects, IRP Alpha, supported by CNRS, which was mostly for networking between, so keeping the engagement going between not just RMIT and Lyon, but all of the partners that were part of Kudos. After Kudos finished, this enabled us to continue to engage with all the partners and friends that we'd made in France. And so this was sort of part of the context of the glue that was holding things together. So from that, we then put in AFRAN, and this is another slightly different model. So we had Inclusion, which was just École Centrale Lyon and RMIT, 10 students. READY, which was RMIT and all of our European partners, including Lyon. And then the AFRAN model was many Australian universities and many French universities. And so maybe the next slide, this is specifically about Inclusion. So we have 22 French partners and I think 17 Australian partners. This was funded, we found earlier this year, and will fund 64 PhD students. I think we have organised most of the pairings. We might have 1 or 2 loose ends to tie up amongst those. Things have changed a little bit over the time, but we're defining the projects now and hoping to fill them in the first quarter of next year. So that'll be the first round, and we'll do 3 rounds of recruitment for PhD students with that. So this is sort of how this project has grown and snowballed. I imagine as part of the panel, I'll be able to answer some more of the detail on this. But maybe the next slide. What's just happened, we found out in November, is that a new ARC centre, same scheme that funded Kudos, that actually started this ball rolling, that I was a junior member of back then. I'm now the director of a new centre, which includes probably about 30% of people. Dave Moss is here as the deputy director for Swinburne. So RMIT and Swinburne are major nodes of this. And so we're hoping to use this as a vehicle to continue to grow our engagement with France and CNRS in particular. So I think that's my last slide. I think the last slide is just a summary and some contact details, so you can engage with me, and we'll talk about it more in a minute. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Arnan. Very good.
Thanks very much to have invited me to talk this afternoon. So my talk will be divided into 2 parts. First, I will present the international strategy of INRAE, and then I will describe an example of a success story. So INRAE is the French National Institute for Research on Agriculture, Food, and the Environment. Its main mission is to provide knowledge, basic knowledge in these areas, but it's also to provide expertise to stakeholders and to policymakers. So, of course, we are quite well ranked by using academic metrics worldwide, and you can see here our performances on this slide. We are quite a huge institute with more than 11,000 people, including more than 5,000 scientists, both researchers and engineers. We are organized according to a matrix, and we have 18 local research centers in different parts of France, and you can see them here on the map. And in addition to that, we have 14 scientific divisions which work in plant science, in animal science, in human nutrition, also in natural resources and social and economic science, and as well mathematics also. So in INRAE, we have 202 research units, and each research unit belongs to one local center and to one scientific division. In addition to the research units, we have also service units and experimental units, I mean experimental farms, and we have also what we call meta programs, which are programs of the specific research priority across scientific divisions. So on the next slide, I would like to describe briefly the tools we have to promote international collaborations. And these tools are similar to those of the CNRS, but I apologize for that, with different names or different acronyms. So the first one is the joint linkage call. So this is a mechanism to fund small projects to pay only accommodation and travel expenses between the two countries. So both French scientists and their counterparts abroad apply for the same project. And if the project is validated by both organizations, scientists from both countries can travel to visit each other. After that, we have what we call international associated laboratories. In that case, scientists from France and from the other country have to build a project together with background, hypothesis, objectives, work plan, people involved, and budget, and so on. And if the project is validated by both organizations, scientists from both countries can work together. And we have the same in case of many different laboratories in different countries. So if we have, for instance, 3, 4, 5 laboratories in 3, 4, 5 countries, we call that international research network, and the system is similar to the previous one with more laboratories. So now I would like to describe a success story. And first, I would like to thank a lot the two embassies, the French embassy and the Australian embassy, for their financial support for the previous program called FAIR. And I would like also to thank a lot AFRAN for its financial support. So just as a background, I would like to say that Australia has developed a mathematical model to predict beef eating quality. And this model is called the Meat Standards Australia grading system. So here you have different predictors of beef eating quality. For instance, animal age, carcass weight, also sex or the gender of the animals, marbling of beef, aging time of beef, and so on. So you have here many different indicators of eating quality, and the model predicts the eating quality, which might be 3 stars, medium, 4 stars, better than medium, or 5 stars, which means premium. And it's possible to predict the beef eating quality for each cut cooking method combinations by combining the factors here, the predictors of beef eating quality. So the system works quite very well. So we have developed a strong collaboration with Australian scientists and also the Australian beef industry to develop this model in France and in other European countries. Just to summarize, beef eating quality depends on different factors related to the animal, age and sex, to the carcass weight, fat thickness, marbling pH, and related to meat, such as the aging time, for instance. So it's important in this system to grade carcasses, and to grade carcasses, we need official carcass graders, and we organized 2 training sessions, one in France and one in Spain, and some people were trained in a room with a computer or were trained in the chiller to grade carcasses, and this was conducted under the auspices of the International Meat Research 3G Foundation, which is a foundation located in Poland, in which different scientists from different countries participate. So this is really an international foundation to promote the best system to predict beef eating quality. So a French private company is using this approach in addition to other Australian beef companies and other companies in the world. So this International Meat 3G Foundation aims to promote scientific collaborations between different countries. And you have here the reference of a scientific paper describing the International Meat 3G Foundation. And this foundation was approved by the specialized section of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe on standardization of meat. And this section of the United Nations Economic Commission supports the foundation to help this foundation to disseminate common rules to predict beef eating quality. So the foundation has 2 branches, a scientific branch with a scientific council, and this scientific council is in charge of developing a prototype to predict beef eating quality in European countries and other countries as well, based on data which come from different scientific projects, thanks to different public grants in different countries. The other branch of the foundation is a commercial branch. So any private company can provide data related to carcasses, and then the foundation will provide prediction of beef eating quality for each cut cooking method combination, and then the data can be used to improve the robustness of the modeling approach to better predict beef eating quality later on. So again, I would like to advertise this meeting in which there will be a session focused on beef grading systems in the world. So I would like to thank you very much to have listened to me.
Thank you, Jean-François. I hope our vegetarian friend is not in the audience anymore with all the photos. Florence?
Thanks. So can I use this to change slide? Okay, awesome, thanks. First, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I speak to you today. I would like to pay my respect to elders, past, present, and emerging, especially in regards to their deep sense of belonging to the land that I think we have a lot to learn from. I would like to change slide and ask you a question. What do a medical team and a Formula One team have in common? I'll let you think about it and I'll share a little story. Imagine the largest pediatric center for intensive care in the UK. That saw at some point a high number of patients dying post-heart surgery in a short space of time. They tried to understand what was happening, and what they found out was that the patient's state was declining during the process called the handoff, while the patients were being disconnected from the operating theater, transported on a mobile bed to the ICU, and reconnected. And it turns out that this decline of health of the patient wasn't only due to the risky state of the surgery, but also to the quality of the handoff itself. Now, it happened that two surgeons, after a difficult surgery, were having a break, sat down together in front of TV and watched a Formula One race. And they saw how quickly and effectively the team at the pit stop was able to disconnect or reconnect tires. And they saw similarity with the handoff. They organized for a team of surgeons to go and watch the British Grand Prix and observe how the team at the pit stop was performing. They were all extremely impressed, so much that they organized for the surgeons to go and meet the Ferrari Formula One team at their headquarters in Milan. Now, the Formula One team was a bit less impressed when they were presented with a video of a handoff performed at the operating theater. But they saw a lot of possibilities to improve the handoff process. And from that collaboration, there was a reduction in 50% of errors. It also led to an increase in survival rate of patients. Now, I find this example extremely inspiring. This is really what cross-boundary collaborations can enable. My name is Dr. Florence Cortel. I'm a neuroscientist, but mostly I am a strong believer that cross-boundary collaborations are essential to be able to deliver impactful innovation. And when I see all of you here today representing different fields, different institutions, and different approaches to problems, I see new possibilities. I see original solutions, and I see a chance for a better world. So I founded an organization that catalyzes collaboration between different researchers from different disciplines to enable them to tackle together real-world complex problems. Bliss Science and Innovation, Inc., I'm not sure you can read this actually, is the name of this. And basically what we do can seem a bit standard. We connect emerging academics across disciplines, and that's in order to help them to catalyze collaborations. We connect them with technical resources, local facilities, with innovators and industry partners. And of course, we support transdisciplinary projects through prizes. But we do everything in a unique way. And in that difference really resides all the greater impact that we're able to bring. Every speaker is trained for communication for collaboration before they join any of our events. And at Bliss, all the operations are run by researchers who are volunteers. As they set up initiatives, very original initiatives, they are introduced and trained for collaborative leadership and co-design. And as they develop their skills, we hope to lead cultural change. Now, from my years of being a bit obsessed on how we can all collaborate better, I would like to share with you 4 tips that will seem extremely trivial, yet are absolutely essential for successful collaborations. And the first one is to be open to other disciplines. Exactly like the medical team has been open to the Formula One team. And to get back to that example and answer the question, what do a medical team and a Formula One team have in common? A goal. In that example, their goal was all to increase the survival rate of patients. And for successful collaboration, it is essential to articulate a common goal and make sure that everybody understands the common goal. Now, in that funny illustration, it's an example taken from my life as a past volunteer for French Red Cross. You can see a team of first aiders lifting a victim. And I think it's pretty easy to imagine how each and every team member is as important as the others. Even though they contribute uniquely to the common goal, everybody is as important. And in research and in any successful collaboration, it is essential to make sure that every team member understands how they uniquely collaborate, how they uniquely contribute, and how they all contribute to the common goal. And most trivial, but absolutely not least, ask questions. Ask the right questions and never hesitate to ask any question. No question is actually trivial. And if you ever hesitate, just remember the Mars Climate Orbiter that NASA lost because a module was making calculations using imperial units when the other modules were using the metric system. You would think someone would have checked. They forgot to ask the question. So in line with be open to other disciplines, be open to others, I organize events for alumni of Sorbonne Université and AFRAN, and that could be a fantastic event for you to meet your next collaborator. Now, this short presentation is entitled Inspiration and Communication as Powerful Tools for Collaboration, and I hope that through that talk, I made that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Very inspiring. Jody, precious on.
Oh, that's right. They say last but not least. It's good. Thanks for having me here today. This is a pretty exciting and unexpected request. So I'm happy to share my story and hopefully inspire you to know what it's like when you get out there and actually collaborate with people. So my name is Jody Gertz. I'm a beekeeper, bee breeder, research scientist. I'm founder of a company called Bee Scientifics. I've recently joined the academic staff at La Trobe University. It's where I got my PhD as well. So I've been asked to speak about how I learned about the Victoria Fellowship and the AFRAN Associate Award, how I've applied what I've learned, the benefits it's brought to me as a scientist. So that's kind of the story here, but I'll start with a bit of context into the background and the focus of my research. There we go. It was late winter 2020. I just finished my final report that summarized my experience from traveling in the United States under International Specialized Skills Institute Agribusiness Fellowship. I was really interested in honeybee breeding and how different organizations worked across private, government, not-for-profit, and university sectors. That collaboration was really quite interesting to me. So the whole question, the question that lots of people were trying to answer is, how do we protect our honeybees from the varroa mite? How do we breed our bees for varroa resistance? Before I get anywhere, who has heard of the varroa mite in the last 2 months, 3 months, or before? Okay, a few people. It's been all over the news, so I'll explain to you a little bit about what it is. See, the varroa mite's a parasite of the honeybee. It feeds on the adult bee and the developing bee. It feeds on the bee's fat bodies, which is where their immune system is, and more importantly, it vectors deadly viruses. The varroa mite and associated infections is the #1 cause of colony death globally. So we know that in time, that host pathogen relationship will come into balance. Over time, honeybees will learn to live with the varroa mite, and it's going to be okay. But the commercial beekeeping sector in Australia doesn't have the luxury of time. So these selective breeding programs are really, really important. And it's my thinking, and it was my thinking in 2020 and before, that if we can establish these breeding programs in Australia before the varroa mite comes, we can protect our $18 billion a year industries that depend on honeybees. So it's a really pretty big situation here. And the problem, well, one thing that I'm finding challenging is a lot of disciplines in this room have universities that support their research. But in Australia, we don't have universities that support honeybee research. So it makes it quite a different perspective of how we approach this problem. So from what I learned in the United States is that the reproductive biology is the easy part about honeybees. And I could tell you on and on and on stories about reproductive biology of honeybees. It's quite fascinating. But the hardest part in establishing breeding programs and research in general is financing and collaboration. Finding the money and the people that build and maintain the institutional memory that is critical for progress, so we can make progress over time. So I felt like I'd opened a huge can of worms when I'm learning about what's happening in the United States, but I'm still not sure how to bring that into Australia, given we don't have varroa mites. Then an email comes from a friend, John Roberts at CSIRO, and it's a call for the AFRAN Associate Award. It's a call for the Victoria Fellowship, and I thought, yes, great, this is exactly what I need to do. What a dream! I was a part of a team that brought the first honeybee semen into Australia. So we're talking about breeding, and honeybees produce semen, and we can travel it around the world. And we've done that to Australia. We've brought the first varroa-resistant queens into Australia. And part of that project was working with Arista Bee Foundation. They're based in the Netherlands, and I saw an opportunity for just seeing what was happening in the Arista network in Australia. So Arista's developed the gold standard of what I think of as breeder colony selection, and more importantly, people power harnessing. So I'm going to move forward here a bit. This is my travel in Europe. And this is Bart-Jan from Arista. So what they've done is they've built a coordinated and decentralized bee breeding network in Europe that's focused on developing colonies that can manage life without varroa. So it's wholly applicable to what would happen in Australia if and when we get the mite. But I'd also been following the work of Fanny Madej at ENRA in Avignon for years. So Fanny and colleagues look at honeybees' response to volatiles, chemicals produced by infected larvae and the varroa mite, and as a consequence of varroa parasitism. So they've created innovative techniques to monitor and assess the honeybees' response to varroa triggers without actually having the mite. So this would be a really innovative approach for us to take in Australia to breed for resistance, even if we don't have the mite here yet. So I saw this opportunity I saw this fellowship as an opportunity to pursue these relationships and interests. As you would have noted, here we this fellowship was delayed. I was awarded in 2020, but I didn't travel until 2022. And This is really important. This is a really important part of why. I mean, I've been on this project, this program, the Can We Breed for Varroa Resistance Without Having Varroa for over a decade. And 3 days before I left for this fellowship, it was reported to have the largest and widest spread incursion of the varroa mite in Australia to date. So the development and the spread of the varroa mite in Australia, while I was overseas, working with people and institutions and colleagues and beekeepers, saying, oh, how's the varroa mite going in Australia? I don't know. It just overshadowed the whole trip. And there was a lot of concern. Ooh, you know, I don't know what kind of life I'm going to come back to as a bee researcher in Australia. But I was under a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of pressure to learn, assimilate, develop workable strategies. So if we needed to move forward, breeding bees for resistance in a varroa landscape in Australia, we could do that. So the benefits of the Victoria Fellowship and the AFRAN Associate Award have just been incredible. Not only did I learn practical tools of my trade that I've employed and I've used just already in my day-to-day work, the relationships, the connections, the dreaming, the vision that we've shared with colleagues overseas and in France. And you'll see that I wasn't just in France, in the Netherlands, we're in Germany, Switzerland, Austria. So had a lot of opportunity to make connections with a lot of people around. The candid conversations and apiaries, the stories shared in the space in between, the people, the human side of the questions that we have has just built this beautiful springboard for future endeavors, connections, and synergies. And I'll just leave you with, I don't know where to point this, one of my favorite quotes. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing that has. So no matter what you're focused on, we can find those bridges and come together to solve the problems that face us all. So thank you very much.
Thank you to all the speakers. And before I forget, before we ask for questions, we have about 25 minutes for the discussion. I just want to thank very much my colleague Natalie, who's sitting here, because I'm the chair of the panel, but she should really be the chair. She's organized most of the panel while I was busy with other things. So I thank her very much. Okay. Is there a question from the audience to our panelists? I think we saw very interesting different ways. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Emmanuelle Valkowiak. I'm from La Trobe University. I'm an economist. And I'm quite interested on all the programs that are developed for collaboration. And I was wondering what's the room for social science, because it looks quite STEM focused. Looking at the AFRAN program, just so STEM PhD projects. So I was wondering if you try to extend these collaborations to social science. Thank you.
In the area of befitting quality, the aim is to develop a more efficient social economic model to better satisfy consumers. So it's not only technical research, it's also social and economic research, because the grading scheme from Australia I described before has changed dramatically the organization of the beef industry supply chain in Australia, and therefore it's much easier to satisfy the Australian consumers in terms of beef eating quality, because they will find the right price for the right quality. The price and the quality are matching very well in Australia compared to the situation in France. So in this research program, there is quite a social dimension and an economic dimension as well, which are the consequences of the technical research which was first developed.
I can probably answer on behalf of AFRAND and how it came about. So I'm from a STEM discipline, and we sort of tapped a lot of our networks to work that out. But really, we attempted to make it relevant to all of the areas that CNRS was involved in, and there is some social science that CNRS is involved in. There might even be some in AFRAND. It's possible, but yeah. Yeah, so really it was sort of driven by alignment with the where CNRS had activities in French universities, but yeah, it was mostly just who could we find and what connections. There's quite a lot of research in AFRAND that's sort of wildly outside my discipline, by my standards anyway.
And also to say something about this, which is important for us, because we are working a hybrid team. So it means human and machine making a team. So it's important for us, for instance, to work on questions like trust, because if you have to work with machine or with artificial agents, you need a good level of trust in this machine. And also we believe that the way we can make new efficient AI will be based on the expertise of human to be included in the design of the AI. So it's also very important for us to have this connection with social sciences, and we are welcoming all collaboration on these topics.
Yes, I should say something a little bit similar. We have a very important project network with Australian partners, which is the AFRAN FACES. It's a network in energy with two main sectors, batteries and hydrogen. And this is one of the projects we are thinking about upscaling it and making a future international research lab. And we thinking about that, we have discovered that it involves chemistry, chemists, physicists, engineers, people doing artificial intelligence, but also more and more, we know that it involves also people who are in the field of social and human science, because there are many questions about societal impacts. There are many questions about regulations, because you cannot launch in a country research programs if you do not know before upstream what will be the regulations. And so for that, social science are absolutely key. And more in CNRS, we are pushed to include social science in most of our programs.
Yeah.
I mean, now we really see that to try to not just solve a problem, but actually design a solution that people are going to use, it's essential to have like what we used to call the hard science and social science working together. And we kind of try in the way we communicate, not just to see ourselves anymore as somebody that is defined by the subject that you studied at university or the PhD that you've done, but really as a contributor to a specific field that motivates you. And that is a good way to stop seeing yourself as a potential partner for an established program in physics, if you're a physicist, in social science, but really somebody that can contribute to a problem that you want to solve.
Thank you. Any other question from the audience? I might actually rebound on this question because it's something that is pushed in many areas and specifically in CNRS and also in RAE apparently, is that we want more and more interdisciplinary projects. And so my question is, do you think we have the tools to push interdisciplinary project? And if not, what is missing? At CNRS, for example, you have 10 institutes. One is social sciences. Do you think CNRS has the proper tools to really foster interdisciplinarity, or do we need more?
Thank you. Yes. CNRS 2 years ago has celebrated its 80th birthday, and we have a very heavy legacy, and the structuration in 10 institutes, 10 departments is very heavy. And I hope there is nobody from CNRS headquarters here, but the power is in CNRS is in the departments. And our chief scientist, his main job is to try to make those departments working together. We have created one new department in CNRS recently, which is the MITI, which means Department for Interdisciplinary Initiatives. And it launched internal calls for interdisciplinary topics. It launched also PhD programs with interdisciplinary topics. When it's about international programs such as our IRPs, IRS, and so on, they are interdisciplinary. And even if I consider alpha, for example, there is physics, there is chemistry, there is optics, there is biology, because we are doing biosensing, environment, and so on. So they are already very interdisciplinary. And I believe that the more they will be interdisciplinary, the best evaluation they will receive in CNRS.
So within INRAE, as I explained before, we have research units, and on the same site, the same research center, we have different research units which work on different topics. But because they are on the same site, the collaboration is very easy between the different research units. So this is one point. This is our matrix organization. Another point is that INRAE has launched what I called meta program, which are interdisciplinary internal projects to answer global questions in response to huge challenges. And so scientists from different scientific divisions, from different research units are encouraged to work together. So the fact that all these units and all these scientific divisions are part of the same institution, it's also a factor which helps a lot collaboration between units, between scientific divisions, because the headquarters of INRAE has a strong policy to encourage collaborations internally. In addition to that, we have also what we call in the French system joint research units. It means units, research units, which are under the supervisions of two institutions. So not only INRAE, but also another institution, which might be locally a university or a teaching organization, a school of engineers or something like that. So we have joint research units which are led by two organizations, and this favors also the collaboration between different organizations locally in the same region. So in fact, we have different tools, but to have exchange and good discussions between these different organizations and across the different levels of organization, we need some time to discuss. So it might be some time consuming, but it's a cost to be really interdisciplinary.
We have a question here.
Thank you. Sam Newell from Swinburne University. I think Jean-Francis, I think it was, really clearly mapped out for one of the projects. Success was developing a model, training people on a model, and then that model being implemented commercially. That really kind of maps out how he defines success in that collaboration. I'm interested in some of the other panelists' personal opinions on what really evidences success in a collaboration that they're getting out of these tools.
You are asking about how if the collaboration is successful in how to assess it.
Yeah, I think you spoke to it really well. You showed benefits from your collaboration as a really clear 3 steps. I'm interested in other panelists, you as well too, but how do you define success out of the collaboration? We've got the tools for it now, but what does success look like?
Okay, so we have different systems or metrics to assess interdisciplinary collaboration. One simple metric is simply the number of the quality of scientific articles or scientific papers co-authored by different scientists from different disciplines. This is one way. Another way is to have a joint PhD students co-supervised by different scientists from different disciplines. And if it works well, the outputs of such PhD will be, again, scientific papers co-authored by different scientists. So this is simple way, but also in our organization, we also developed what we call collective expertise on request on the Ministry of Agriculture, on the Ministry of Research. So when there is a problem or a questions which comes from the government or from the society, the government asks, for instance, INRAE to develop this type of collective expertise. So internally, headquarters of INRAE will ask different scientists from different disciplines, from different scientific divisions, not to solve the problem, but to, let's say, describe the state of the art, the current knowledge, the situation about this problem. And it's a good way to have opinions from people, for instance, involved in human nutrition on one side, and maybe scientists involved in production on the other side, and scientists experts in economics as well. And by combining all this expertise, we can provide an answer to the request of the government. It means a booklet with different points of view, which have been shared by the different scientists. So these are different metrics to assess the interdisciplinary collaboration.
I'll just follow up on this because it's a fantastic question. Basically, people reach out to me when they feel that they are collaborating on paper, but they feel that technically they're working independently on one big project. And what they describe is that they feel that even though they are producing some work, the collaboration is failing because they don't feel that they're working together. And exactly the question that you've asked is a key question to ask to everybody at the start of a project. And it goes back to what I was talking about, a common goal. Just meeting with everybody that's going to be involved in a project and starting a conversation with what is success going to be like for us? What is it? And publications are something that we cannot ignore in academia. We need it. That's just like it. But the success can be in many different ways. And there are team members that are going to be motivated by different aspects of the success. And it's important to be sure that actually everybody is going to get the part of the success that motivates them so that everyone works together. But to have one kind of big picture of what success is like is how you initiate and start a project that is going to be successful.
You want to add something?
Yeah, and I guess further to that, being a part of several different collaborative projects, cross-discipline, they're very hard. The hardest part about science is the people, I think, and the communication and the goals that we bring and our idea of success along the way. When communication breaks down on a team, that's when you can feel like you're not getting anywhere or that you're not valued. Part of having a successful collaboration is listening to your peers, your colleagues. Everybody comes in with a different expertise and a different set of skills, not only in their learning and education, but in their quality of how they think, how they interpret things, and how they problem solve. So having successful collaborations really involves listening and hearing. From that, you can problem solve your way through anything. And having it set out at the beginning, you come up with a collaborative group, set those goals at the beginning, then you have a backbone and some infrastructure to call on when you get into a sticky problem, which will happen when you're working with anybody along the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
Maybe, okay, you discuss about metrics and so on. I agree. I think that success can also be the result of a very, very long-term investment. And maybe I can think our projects are 20, 30 years old projects. And I think about SKA, for example, also. France will join SKA next year. CNRS is member of SKA this year. But we work with SKA for 25 years. We host in France 2 Pathfinder of SKA, which are working pretty well. So it's a very, very old engagement, sometimes not very politically supported in France because there was very strong fights about going to SKA. And sorry, SKA square kilometer array. Thank you, Jean-Philippe. I'm sorry, for me, it's so evident, but okay. So we work on the square kilometer array for more than 20 years, and we will join only next year.
Maybe just to conclude, I agree, it's very important to have some time, because when you talk, when you have these discussions with people who are not from your field, first you have to understand or to agree on a kind of vocabulary, because the same words may have different meanings depending on where you come from. And also what is important is to, as you said, ask questions, because the interest of being in a multidisciplinary group is that you may have some questions you never had before. This question can be stupid, but if one of them is not stupid, then it can be a breakthrough. And this is where you could have the success. But you need some time for that.
Yeah, I think we're in Melbourne, so I might use a poll case. There was a question, 5 minutes, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, from little things, big things grow. And I think that's what you showed, Arnan. You really believe that without the small project that you had before, you would not have been successful with AFRAN. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes good project and good collaboration takes time to build up, and you start from little things.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, halfway through, it isn't clear what you're doing, you know. So in the end, oh yes, you know, it's oh yes, that was impactful, or that made a difference. Halfway there, it's taken a long time. Are you going to get anything at the end of it? You know, you don't know, and so you really have to have, I guess, sustain the vision, and keep working at it, and just yeah.
You say sustained vision. On the outset, did you have the goal of having a research center? Like when you started, what was your goal in 20 years?
So you know, for example, the sabbatical that I went to Europe to investigate, okay, how are we going to engage with Europe? I went to each of my European partners and said, right, what are we going to do that's at scale? How are we going to actually engage at a scale that's bigger than just me and you? And you know, the one that took off was with Ecocentralion, and you know, in a couple of steps, like the scale that's bigger than us is, you know, the original was a collision, 10 PhD students. No, it's a bit bigger. And then, you know, 64 PhD students, and we're not finished yet. You know, we could do bigger than that. But I guess, you know, the question then is, okay, so how big, and what's the point beyond there? You know, with the Combe Center that we're looking at now, we want to get this technology into the real world. You know, what does that mean? Well, we can talk about that, you know, what that means in the real world, but, you know, we know what it is at the moment and it's in laboratories and what it could do, but you know, we'll be happy when it's actually, you know, in our digital watches and, you know, out in our cars and, you know, in satellites and in the real world. Yep.
Okay, well, we got 2 minutes. There's a question. Oh, Peter.
Thank you. My name is Peter Tolle, a retired engineer and past president of AFAS, which is now part of AFRAN. My question is to Jody. You preempted the arrival of Varroa into Australia, and we know each other from past association. Now that you've been to France and that the Varroa has hit Australia, where to from here, and what about the collaboration, the ongoing collaboration with your fellow researchers in France?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. That's a great question. And I'm dying to tell you about it. So we're in a conversation with Bart-Jan from Arista, Fanny from INRA, John Roberts from CSIRO, just looking to figure out how we can come up with a question, an experimental design, and more importantly, the capacity here in Australia to be able to continue our research. So the hard part for us is not having a research center, not having a pollination research center here in Australia. Most of the beekeeping bee side of it, research side of it, is off of private enterprise. So it's a really interesting conversation for connection into industry, because that's where we'll have to go to do most of the bee research. But watch this space. We'll be submitting grant applications as soon as they open up, hopefully in the next 6 months.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up. We're just on time. What I want to say is that we've seen some tools already for successful collaboration. There's, according to me and to others, Jean-Philippe talked about it, we really need a co-funding scheme between Australia and France. And there will be a joint science meeting between France and Australia in 6 months. We're pushing hard at the embassy to have the funding agency, the ARC in Australia and the ANR in France to be part of this joint science meeting and to try to find a way to co-fund projects for Australia and France, because that's also a key tool that is still missing. So we're working on it. We hope that we will be successful. Yeah, hopefully in 23 or 24, there will be some joint projects, call for projects. Now, the program is to visit labs at Swinburne. If you've never been to Swinburne and you've never seen the labs here, they're quite amazing. So I've seen them, but I'm gonna have to see them again because they're too great. So I think Yvonne will tell you more about it. Thanks very much for this, for all the talkers. and go to the lab. Thank you.